In this video, we'll study the specificities of the detail node of the work with and the all sections content control. We'll then move on to the various options available for showing them in the application. And finally, in the end, we'll see how we may customize the detail screen. The work with for smart devices pattern includes a feature we'll be considering in detail. We already saw that when we apply the pattern to a transaction, a structure with several objects is generated. We have the list, which allows us to view all records, and, by default, when we select one of them, we go to the Details screen, which we'll focus on now. The work with pattern analyzes the information of the transaction, to which we apply the pattern, as well as its base table and also all the subordinates, even when they're not levels of the transaction. Based on that analysis, the various sections that depend on the detail node are generated. If we analyze the case of the restaurant, we'll see that the base table of the transaction is restaurant, with no subordinates table. So, the pattern only generates a node for the detail node, that is, the general node. In runtime, when we access a record, we'll see the content of the general node, and in this case, since it has no related information, we will not see any tabs. On the other hand, for cases where the transaction indeed has subordinate tables, the detail will also contain, in addition to the general section, one section for each of the subordinate tables. This would be the case of the speaker transaction. Even though the transaction has only one level, with base table speaker, there is a subordinate table for this one that's session speaker. There is an n-to-1 relation. Therefore, when the pattern is applied, two nodes will be generated under the detail node, namely the general node and the node for session speaker. In runtime, when a speaker is selected, we'll see the general node and we'll also have the possibility of viewing the information about sessions in the Sessions tab. There is a part of the pattern that we never considered until now, and that is the detail node. By default, this node has a control called All Sections Content, which is inside a table. As the name indicates, this control shows the content of all the sections pending from the detail node, and this is automatic. We can only use this control on the details screen. This is because it's not available in any other object or node of the work with. The control has some properties, which we can modify, that relate to its appearance: tab section class, visible, and invisible mode, and how it's set up in the layout, row and column span, horizontal and vertical alignment. The display property enables us to specify the way in which all the sections contained in the all sections content will look like. This property has 4 values available. The platform default value indicates that it'll be viewed according to the platform. For the case of Android, tabs will be used as we've seen so far, and it's the only value possible for this platform. One general tab and one additional tab for each section. In the case of iOS, the information is shown inline for the general section and the link for each section of the detail. With the tab, inline, and link values, we will indicate that we wish for all sections to be shown that way. These 3 values only apply when we generate for iOS. For Android, the only value is tab. In order to manage the sections individually, we must delete the All Sections Content control. When we do so, we'll have available a series of controls in the toolbar. One to add all sections content again, and one for each of the sections we have available. That way, we can insert those controls and, for each of them, set up the display property individually. But in these cases, we will only have the inline and link options available. Let's suppose that, upon accessing the detail of a conference, in the first tab named Info, we want to view the conference's information inline, and underneath the link to access the screen to show us the speakers. We also want to have a tab to access the subjects included in that conference. Let's go to GeneXus to implement what we've just seen. If you haven't done it yet, we'll now mark to apply the pattern work with for smart devices to the session transaction. You can see that we already applied some stencils to the list. Session info list. That's to the grid of the track session. The track view stencil. And we applied it to section speaker, the speaker info stencil, and to the general section, the session general view stencil. Attached to the material, you'll find the xpz additional underscore stencils.xpz, along with the objects we're using. Let's consider the detail of the layout of the detail node. Note that it's actually like any other layout, and we can even add another type of controls, such as attributes or variables, images, buttons, and grids, among other things. We'll remove the all sections content control so that we can work with the sections separately. Note that in the toolbox, we now have the 4 sections available. In the layout, for example, we'll add a tab control because, as we saw, we don't have this view available when we remove the all sections content. So we add the tab, and we'll place the caption info on the first page. Okay. In the second page, we'll include tracks. And we won't use the third page, so we'll choose Delete Tab. In the first page, we'll insert from the toolbox to the general section inside that tab, and below it, we'll insert the speaker section. We'll leave general section inline, and for speaker section, we'll use link as we mentioned. Now, to avoid having the link occupy so much space in the table, we'll set platform default, PD, in row style. And lastly, in track, we'll insert the track section in this tab from the toolbox. This one will also appear in line, which is the default value. And now let's save. We'll first show you something we never mentioned before. How does the detail screen filter and show us only the record we selected from the list and its related information? Well, both in the detail node and in each section, we'll see that the primary key is received as parameter. This is how the content is filtered of the record that we're viewing right now. Also note that, as in the grid, for example, in the speaker section of the grid, we're only using attributes that belong to the speaker base table. So if we don't want it to use the speaker table and session speaker, we must indicate that table name in base transaction. The same goes for track. To make it filter by session ID, we must indicate another base table different from track, so we use session track. We save. And now we'll add, in the Event Day menu, a new option to call the sessions. We'll include sessions in the description. And in the image, we'll include dashboard option _ sessions. And we save. And now we finally execute the application. So now, we already have the changes. So we go to Sessions, and we enter the first one, for example. And there we see, on one hand, the information of the general section inline, the speakers as a link, and if we tap, we'll see the list of speakers and the tracks in another tab. Let's get back to the presentation. Let's review what we've just seen in this video. We first saw the sections generated and what they're used for in the Work With for smart devices. And we saw where the All Sections content control was located, as well as the container used in the detail screen to show the sections. Then we saw the various visualization options available to us for showing when we use the All Sections content control. They were Platform Default, Tab, Link, and Inline. And lastly, we saw a case where we customized the detail screen using the sections individually within the detail.